Okay, I believe that we were.
What? I know we're gonna watch that.
Would you like me to seat you in the back? That's another way of saying it. Absolutely. Let's see. Where were we?
We were doing the
We did that
student
one.
work. We didn't finish.
No, I know that.
Oh, the.
I think we're on the third one on page 147. I don't think we answered that one. I know we answered the one above it. So, committing sin, committing sin in verse 34 refers to the habit of sinning as a pattern of life. What does Jesus say he offers to his sons? Yeah.
Or the life of Jesus.
Yeah. So, the ability to not be captive to sin. Does that mean we won't sin anymore? No, not on this side of heaven, right? But freedom from a life of sin. What would you have thought of Jesus if he told you that your father was the devil? Would you have been convicted in your hearts, or would you have wanted to attack him? Yes, Knox.
Yes, I would feel very convicted. Jesus.
That's good. Not sure that would be my answer. Yes.
I think my immediate reaction is offensive because, like, someone like calling you out on something or like all the time is not an easy thing. It's not just automatic accept, but like deep down, I think, yeah, I do.
You'd at least be offended, yes. I would think. Yeah.
Devil's advocate.
Okay.
I think it's like if you have loyalty to like your father, it's all you know. You're probably going to be like really defensive of that. I think if like as an impulse, you would like try to defend them and go after the person who says that. Like, I would think like if the devil had that over you, I feel like it wouldn't be a pleasant authority. Like, it wouldn't be the right relationship, so you would want to have a better relationship.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jesus.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think especially if you revere your father, which I do, then that would be really offensive, I think. Yeah.
Honestly, I probably would have been confused and be like, "What do you mean my dad's the devil?
Yeah.
Like what?"
Yeah, I can see that.
I would be like,
"Not my daddy." Yeah.
I mean, he's not wrong, but I'd probably still disagree with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think if I were Fitz, I'd probably be upset because essentially what he's talking to the people who think they're the most righteous people. So it's like, I've been doing it all my life. What do you mean that's the devil? You're saying I've been doing things for the devil this whole time?
Yeah.
Like you're insane.
Yeah. And I'm the smartest of the smartest. I'm the holiest of the holiest. What are you talking about? Yeah.
Well, it's hard because we're on this side of it, so we actually know who Jesus is.
Right.
But I think if I was in that situation, I would probably that's not fair. No one calls my dad a devil.
Yeah. Yeah.
What says devil? Does it mean like a devil, just a really bad
Satan. Yeah, the literal Satan. And remember that in those days, generally speaking, you did whatever your father did, right? If your father was, like in Jesus' case, a carpenter, you became a carpenter. If your father was a member of the Sanhedrin, or if you were a member of the Sanhedrin, if you were a Jewish leader, your father was too. If you were a Levite, your father, that's how the only way you get to be a Levite is if your father was a Levite. So it's highly likely that they're taught that when he says your father is the devil, he's not saying that your earthly father was the devil. He's literally saying Satan is your father.
Yeah.
He's not saying your father is Satan. He's saying Satan is your father. And that, I would think that would offend most people. And it certainly did in this case. What did Jesus mean when he said, before Abraham was, I am? Yeah.
I mean, it's the same as like the pre-existence thing. He's just saying it's like, hey, I was literally at the creation of the world. I know all this stuff.
Yep. That is exactly what he's saying. Yes.
Like Yahweh.
Mhm.
I'm God, basically.
And did they understand it to be that way? That
Yeah.
was he was saying? Absolutely.
the
That's why
reference.
they just went ballistic. My guess is that that there was some, ayes and some throwing. They throw dust up when they got angry, and they tear their clothes when they got angry. Very passionate,
5-year-old brother.
very passionate culture. And so, yeah, he's saying he's eternal. He's saying I am. He's saying I am Messiah. I have always been. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And that's exactly what he's saying of himself. The same thing that John says about him. What would you have thought if you saw a man claiming to be older than a man who died hundreds of years before?
This guy's out of his mind.
He's out of his mind, yeah.
Bonkers.
Yeah,
Come on.
and they thought that, or in their case, they thought he was evil, right? Or he was, he was, like you said, insane. Yeah.
And that probably would have been especially like triggering to like the older people in his time because they were born. Trying to say this thing like air.
Yeah, this is happening in Jerusalem, not in Nazareth, but there may have been some people there that knew who Jesus' background, and you're just the son of a carpenter. They knew he was a common man. They knew they didn't understand where he got his learning because they knew he was unschooled, basically, that he hadnstudied under a rabbi. So they knew he was a common man. And how can you be making such claims if you're just a carpenter? Why did Jesus try to, why did the Jews try to stone him? Why were they angry at what he said? Yes. Yeah. There's only two possibilities here. Either it's true or it's false. Either he is eternal, he is Messiah, or he's not. He's certainly claiming to be Messiah. And in their case, if blasphemy was punishable by death, right? And so it's either true or it's blasphemy, and there's no middle ground. There's no Jesus was a good teacher. If he said this and and it wasn't true, he's crazy or a liar. And so that's they determined it wasn't true, and so they had no other choice but to declare him guilty of blasphemy. Do you think verse 59 describes a miracle? Why or why not? We kind of touched on that yesterday.
I don't know if it is, but if you considering there's like the whole thing with Jesus writing on the ground, like they don't describe it, but there's a whole like narrative related to it. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was something related to it.
Yeah, he hid himself. That's kind of difficult to determine, right? Yes.
I believe that it is like I think about it like if you're talking to somebody, you're talking to them like you're in sight, right? Like you can just walk a few feet, and just physically touch them, right? If he's right, if it's like that, and he just like they just go down and pick up some stones, right? And he's just not there anymore. Like that's 100%. Like I don't know. I think of something like superhuman power, whatever. That's what Jesus was. But like I don't know. I personally do because that seems impossible.
I think it's a miracle. Because, first of all, I don't think it really matters whether there's a miracle or not. Because if it was actually something important, I don't know more about it. It doesn't really matter whether there's a miracle or not at the end of the day. But he said,
You're right about that.
but he says, it was only like one single sentence. He just said that he hit himself in the right way. There could have been a ton of crowds. There could have been a ton of pillars. He could have ran behind. Because it doesn't say how far away. Yeah. So they could have confronted him. They could have just sent away the crowd.
Yeah.
Like the word hit, that has a lot of meaning.
They could have been going so crazy that he was able to walk away. Yeah.
His ways are God's ways are really mysterious. It could have been like impossible. So it could have been a miracle in a subtle way or an incredible way. Like he just phases through the crowd and just like suddenly disappears. Or he really just could have like gotten away that easily. And that in itself is a miracle, considering the fact that he was talking to them. They were close enough to throw stones. So
Right.
obviously he got away quickly.
Yeah, whether or not it was a miracle, it certainly was an astonishing event.
I think it's more like whether or not it was like a visible miracle, you know? Because if a miracle in itself, it got away.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like it could have been a subtle one where he just slipped off.
And it's hard to tell with the, go ahead, Allison.
I would say that like the way that I read it, I didn't really picture it as a miracle. I kind of pictured it as kind of just got lost in the people. I mean, if it wasn't a miracle, that's really cool. Like John said, it doesn't really
Yeah. No, and I see that. And the wording doesn't help us any, right? And he hid himself. Hey, did he hide himself literally, like make himself invisible? Or did he go into the crowd and kind of, because he looked like a normal Jew. He didn't, he wasn't glowing. There was no halo. It's hard. Even the wording doesn't give us much help with that. Yeah.
So why does the book bring attention to it if it's not certain? Is it just like want to bring up discussion about it, or
Why doesn't he tell us outright?
I mean, but like why? No, why does the text?
The text.
Oh, that I just to get
The
think
same
about
book
things,
that told us it was made.
so that we'll have conversations like this that are fun to have. Yes, sir.
I think if it was a miracle, the book would have, or they would have written about it. Because like all the other miracles, the other 7 miracles,
Right.
they're all written about like for a good chunk paragraph.
Right.
You know,
He's
That's
been a
literally
quadriplegic
like
for
3
years,
words.
and yeah,
He hid himself.
yeah,
Also,
yeah.
it would ruin the special setting.
There you go. We don't want that. We don't want that. Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, we're gonna take we're gonna change gears without a clutch, as my pastor likes to say, and I'm gonna put this on. No, we'll find out. We'll find out. I'll watch. I don't really watch myself, but okay. So, it's kind of weird where 753 starts, right? But remember that 753 was not in the earliest manuscripts. So the curriculum says that this is the next day. We don't know. We don't know if it's the next day or not. And I think it likely isn't. Remember, that story is kind of out of place. And so we've gone from what was going on just before that to now this story of Jesus. And so they say the day after the feast. I don't think we can know that based on the text. And if it's not in the text, I'm not going to tell you we know it. So let's talk about this first day of the time after the feast. They each went to their own house, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Early in the morning, he came down to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery, and placing her in the midst, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now, in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say?" This they said to test him, that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. And as they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her." And once more he bent down and wrote on the ground. But when they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the older ones. And Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus stood up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on, sin no more." Now, I'm going to fly through this pretty quickly because we're going to do an insert on this story, and so I'm going to fly through what they say here pretty quickly. So Jesus is in the temple again, and the Pharisees are there, And he knew that they were out to get him, but he also knew that he wasn't going to be arrested. He was not going to be crucified until his hour had come. And so the Pharisees try to trap Jesus. They try to get him in a theological trap. And this isn't the last time they'll do this. They'll continue to try and trap him for the rest of his time. So here's the test that they give him. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery, and placing her in the midst, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now, in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say?" This they said to test him, that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. So Jesus is presented with this problem. They bring this woman in front of him, and she has been caught committing adultery, in the very act of adultery. So some man to whom she was not married. And so if he says, so he's got two choices: sentence her to stoning or let her go. That's it. Those are the choices. The law says stone her. If Jesus says, yep, stone her, lawfully in their culture, that was the legally correct thing to do. However, here's this guy that forgives sins, that loves everyone, that has a mission of mercy. It's not a very good look, stoning this woman. And so, on the other hand, if he lets her go, he is not upholding the law, and he can be charged with that. That is against the law, and so he would be labeled a lawbreaker, which he will be labeled, actually. So the Pharisees thought they had it. They had him on the horns of a dilemma. And this woman was just a pawn in their scheme. And they didn't care about her debasement, about her embarrassment. They didn't care about the man. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the insert. They were just trying to trap Jesus. That was their only concern. And so his answer is this. This they said to test him, that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down, and I think they thought, this is a no-brainer. He's going to say stone. And then they could, or maybe they thought, they thought this guy's going to let her go, and then we can charge him. So Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground, and as they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her." And once more he bent down and wrote on the ground. So Jesus shows his wisdom, his divine wisdom, in this interaction with the Pharisees. They asked him a question, and he said nothing. He bent down, and he started writing with his finger or with a stick in the ground. We have no idea what he wrote. He might have been writing the verse, and I think it's from Jeremiah, that their names will be written in the dust. What happens when you write in the dirt? It goes away. It's dust in the wind, to quote Ken. By the way, that was our prom theme song when I was a junior, or when I was a senior. It's horrible. It's horrible. The juniors chose, it was the hugest hit of that year, absolutely. But all we are is dust in the wind for prom? Really? Nothing lasts forever but the earth and sky. What were the juniors thinking? Don't make dust in the wind the prom theme this year, please.
Was anyone dissenting that?
Yes, sir.
Art, don't make teacher pictures.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Oh,
Van Halen, dude.
oh, no,
They voted on Hot for Teacher.
no,
That's so bad.
not good.
The song is about what you think
Not
would be
good.
about.
That's just
It's a great song. It's a great song.
I was
So
outside.
you would think that song was called Hot for Teacher?
Yes.
I would be weird. How did any teacher accept that? I'm just,
Wait.
I was out by
Well, way to stand for
I wasn't that good. I don't know. I wasn't that close to you.
something
I just knew it.
happy, like 25 or 64 or something like that.
I love that guy.
I know, he's great. He's great. Now he's on YouTube talking about that song, but whatever. I don't want him to get fired. So yeah, he didn't say anything immediately. He just bent down and wrote in the dust, and we don't know what he wrote. Now, if they understood that at the time, and I doubt they did, but if they understood that to be the verse that says they'll be written in the dust, and what we just said is that if you write something in the dust, if you write something in the dirt, it doesn't last. And so if he was writing the names or the sins of those men, then they probably would have realized, and they connected it to the verse, they probably would have realized what he was saying, and they may have even anticipated what he was about to do, and that is not charge her with anything. But we can't know that for sure. And so Jesus is in front of this audience, and the Pharisees had interrupted him with this, and we don't know what he was doing before that, but his answer is to let her go. And so the Pharisees were trapped by Jesus' answer, because he says, he doesn't say let her go, right? He says, let any of you who is without sin throw the first stone. Now, we'll talk about what he means by that. But obviously, there was no one there that could legitimately throw the first stone. And if they had, somebody, like, so if Knox was like, yeah, dude, I'm good. What are you two going to go? You're going to slap that. You can't do that. You remember what you did yesterday? So that's not going to fly, because they know each other. And so the Pharisees actually are trapped by Jesus' answer. And at the same time, he revealed, he shows respect for the law, but he also shows the hypocrisy of the leaders. He doesn't just say, let her go, and then he's being disrespectful to the law. He shows respect for the law. Yes, she should be stoned. So go ahead. If you're without sin, right? Very smart. Yeah, almost like he's God. So he displays the hypocrisy of the Jewish leaders. They knew those Jewish leaders knew that they thought that the rules didn't apply, and Jesus is showing them otherwise. I think there are three kinds of people. You remember how people say they're rule keepers, or rule followers and rule breakers? Right? I think there's a third kind of person. That some people are just like, I'm going to keep the rules. Usually the first one, especially if it's a firstborn girl. I'm going to keep the rules, right? Second-born girl, that's not so much, right? And then there are the rule breakers, the ones that are like, I'll give it a shot. I know it's wrong, but I'll give it a shot. I think there's a third one, and it's rule keepers. And rule keepers, I think, are the worst kind of people. They keep the rules for everybody else. They make sure that everybody else is doing the right thing, but they don't apply to me. The rules don't apply to me. Just to you. They only apply to you. And I think that's what the Pharisees are, right? They're not rule followers, they're not rule breakers, they're rule keepers who are saying, all y'all gotta follow those laws. We're above that. We don't have to. And so, which of the Pharisees could cast the first stone? Nicodemus. None of them. None of them could, because they were sin. And we'll talk about this in the insert, but they were probably complicit in the crime itself. And it's possible that people knew that. And so they really couldn't, because if they picked up a stone, they'd be like, dude, you set her up. You can't throw that stone. And so they were probably complicit in it. So what wisdom, man, what wisdom Christ had to know exactly how to defuse this situation. And then we see the shame. But when they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the older ones, and Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. So rather sheepishly, these Jewish leaders who haven't been able to trap Christ and have in the process been trapped themselves walk away, one by one. Why do you think the older ones first? Yeah.
Because they know that they
With age comes wisdom.
So